My wife went on a blind date. What the hell is going on? I should start by giving some background. I, Rust, 46, a 46-year-old male, am married to my high school sweetheart, Angela, 45, a 45-year-old female. We have been together for 32 years. We have known each other since kindergarten at West Elementary School. We started dating in the 8th grade and have never stopped. I take pride in that. I mean it, we have never had a break. It's not our second time around. We have legitimately been either boyfriend, girlfriend, engaged, or married every day since we were 14 years old. We got married right after college. We were both 23 then. I went into accounting and got a good job with an accounting firm. I started my firm when we moved to Boston a few years later. My wife has been teaching either 3rd or 4th grade for the last 22 years. During that time, we had 2 great kids. We had our oldest daughter, Shelley, 21, a 21-year-old female, right away after we married. We then had our son, Tom, 19, a 19-year-old male, 2 years later. We have lived a fairly normal American life, entering this empty nest stage of our lives. Tom is a sophomore in college now, and Shelley is a senior. They both attend the University of Boston, which is nice because they are only an hour away. We are financially very well off. This hasn't been a stressor for us in over a decade. We have many savings. I should be able to retire in about 10 years, and she should be able to do so. When we get there, we have the typical tour of the country in an RV plan. For 32 years now, we have supported each other. We have had a few bumps along the road, but nothing serious. We both have maintained a decent fitness level. We are social. We are friends with several couples. Our bedroom life has diminished some with age, but is by no means dead. That's basically it. That's our lives in a nutshell. That's why I can't make sense of what happened last night. Everything leading up to last night seemed normal. I have been recounting the last few weeks all day, and nothing sticks out. We both went to work yesterday. I got home at about 5:45 p.m. When I arrived, I noticed my wife was in the shower. It was not her usual routine, but I didn't think anything of it. I went downstairs to get a start on dinner. I had picked up a couple of sirloins, so I fired up the grill. I figured some au gratin potatoes and asparagus would pair well. I went on making the entire meal. While I was close to finishing, I went back to let my wife know dinner was ready. As I entered our main bedroom, my wife sat at her vanity. The room smelled good. I could tell she had put on her favorite perfume. I had heard the hairdryer earlier, but I figured that was just routine. She was sitting there looking amazing. Her highlighted brown hair glowed. She had these curls that spiraled down towards the front of her face. I don't know how to describe it, but she put some effort into her appearance. Watching her, I can't help but wonder if she had a surprise for me. She was wearing nothing but this matching lacy bra and panty set. The bra pushed up and showed her girls off. She was doing her makeup, and I told her, "Hey, babe, dinner is ready. Is there something I missed? Do we have plans?" She didn't turn. She just kept doing her makeup and said, "No, just me. I'm going on a blind date tonight." I laughed, thinking she was just being ridiculous. I said, "Okay," in a silly tone and continued, "Well, dinner ready, so come on down when you're done." Role play is something we did maybe once or twice in our lives, so I thought this might be one of those times. I returned to the kitchen, preparing 2 plates and setting them on the dining room table. Since Angela was so dolled up, I decided to light a candle and pour us 2 glasses of wine. I had just taken a few bites when she came in. She was wearing a stunning black dress. Hair and makeup were done entirely to the max. She looked incredibly sexy. She looked at her plate, then back to me, then lifted her small clutch purse. "I told you I was going on a date. You didn't need to make me a plate." I looked at her and said, "Stop already with that nonsense." She replied, "It's not nonsense. I'm going on a date. I'll be home in a few hours. You don't have to wait up." And she just turned and left. I was still sitting there with my plate in front of me, just dumbstruck. Did she leave to go on a date? After about 30 seconds, I got up and walked over to the door, and her car pulled out of the driveway. As she drove away, she spotted me and waved a little. I went back into the house and grabbed my phone. We have shared a location for several years, so I followed her while she was driving. She went to Tom's restaurant, one of our favorite places. She really did go on a date. I tried calling her 4 times and got no answer. Then I texted her. She finally responded when I said I would come down to the restaurant. She texted, "Do not do that. I told you what I was doing. We can talk about this when I get home." I was mind blown. My lizard brain said to go down there, but reason prevailed. I stewed in the house for a while, unsure what to make of this. 2 hours ticked by, and I knew the place would close soon. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking I just sat here waiting for her. So I went into the guest bedroom and lay down. It was about 75 minutes later that she walked in. I pretended to be asleep. I was hurt by what she did. I can't believe she went on a date. My mind just kept having all these thoughts for what seemed like hours, but wasn't. Who did she go on a date with? What did they do after? It just hit me. I guess she is done with me. 32 years, and this is it. We didn't even have a proper conversation. She has brought to my attention no real issues in the last few years, so I don't think I necessarily did anything wrong. I read a lot, so I know this kind of thing happens. I like reading the personal stories people tell. Sometimes people fall out of love. I guess that's what happened to my wife. She just fell out of love with me. It's not necessarily anyone's fault, but it's still hard to accept. The worst thing is that she just decided to move on. I don't know why I didn't get the courtesy to discuss this, or why she didn't ask to separate first. Why did she start dating? She should have just asked for a divorce before she could date all she wanted. I was tearing up a little when she came into the guest bedroom. "What are you doing in here?" I turned and looked at her. I had cut the tears off. She continued, "Come to bed." I paused for only a moment, then got up. I followed her into the bedroom. She asked me to unzip her, and I did. I was just silent the whole time, totally confused about how to act or what to do. Finally, I asked, "Where did you go?" She said, "Tom's, it was delicious." I probably should have stuck to one drink, but I did have two. My heart sank. She was flippant and nonchalant about the whole thing. "Who did you meet?" She just answered, "His name is John. He's my friend's cousin, Helen. She set us up." It was awkward at first, being a blind date and all. We were meeting for the first time, so I didn't really know how to act. Plus, I have never been on an actual date before, so that was also weird. But Helen did well. He was beautiful and charming. I cannot believe my ears. Who was this woman? That place closes at 10. It's 11:30. Where did you go after dinner? She was removing her makeup at her vanity, but kept answering, "Oh, nowhere. We just sat in his car and talked." There was physical pain in me I had never known before, yet I persisted. "Is that all you did in his car?" She had finished cleaning up and was now getting undressed. She progressed from her evening wear to utterly naked to an old t-shirt and pajama pants as she said, "No, mostly just talked. I was tipsy right after dinner, so I was trying to sober up more so I could drive." We talked for 40 minutes. He eventually kissed me, and we made out a little. I was feeling more sober after a few minutes and called it a night. "We will go out again next Friday, so don't make any plans for the both of us." At that point, she lay down in the bed. I was sitting at the foot of the bed, completely shell-shocked. As I stared at the carpet, numb to the betrayal I felt, she said after a few seconds, "Are you going to lie down? It's pretty late." I was like a zombie. I dropped into my usual boxer shorts, only sleep attire, and climbed next to her. I don't know how long I just stared at the ceiling. I just kept staring even as she scooted back to me, pressing her back but against me in the familiar way we always sleep. My thoughts on how my wife was leaving me, how she was searching for a new man to replace me, and was just going to keep our marriage going until she found one. It was a cruel twist of fate. Still, I felt like she at least owed me some answers. I would get those the next day before I started packing my things. I got up this morning, and my wife was still in bed. It wasn't long. She was up by the time I got out of the bathroom, which was only a few minutes. She made the bed quickly, then took my place in the master bath while I headed downstairs. I sat down at the kitchen table. I wasn't doing anything, just staring. My wife came down not long after and made us a small breakfast. She was acting as though nothing was off. Like any old Saturday morning, she began talking about what we should get done today. I couldn't take it anymore. "Are we going to talk about last night?" She looked at me and asked, "What would you like to know?" I had a very standoffish tone. "Why did you go on a blind date?" She didn't change her demeanor. "Well, I know that's crazy, seeing someone you've never met before, but I want to date. I have never dated, and I think it sounds fun." It was fun. I'm glad I got over my skepticism. I was stunned. There it was. She was auditioning for my replacement, so that's it? You're going to be going on blind dates? I have no say in this. She softened a little. Hun, does that bother you? I didn't mean to make you worry. I'm sorry, I don't have to do that. I'll stick to people I know and vet more going forward. What about you? What are you going to do? You don't have to put yourself out there. You can do whatever. I know there are things you've always wanted to do, just like I've always wanted to date. The fact that it was a blind date is the point. But I didn't say that. I was too out of it just hearing her. This is so easy for her, how? Of course, there are things I want to do, but that doesn't mean I want to throw away my marriage to do them. She talked a little bit more after that last comment, but I can't remember anything about it. She said some things about changes or dynamics or something. I really can't remember. It was like my brain shut down. My wife is dating, and I'm supposed to do what in the meantime? She's out trying to find her next husband. For some reason, she doesn't think she should divorce me first, which is just unbelievably selfish, and I'm supposed to scratch items off my bucket list until then. I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll live and look for the next Mrs. Powell. Do I even want another Mrs. Powell? My most considerable debate at this point is what, if anything, I should tell the kids. Their parents are divorcing, and their mother is looking for a new husband. I hope they won't take it too hard. This has been a strange and challenging time. My wife has been dating John, who operates a power washing business, for the last month. At first, they were just dinner dates. They went on like 4 of those. Then, this past Friday, she told me she wasn't coming home and staying with John overnight. When she got home yesterday around noon, I asked what she had done. She looked at me like I was crazy. I spent the night at John's, she said in a confused tone. Doing what? I asked in an accusing tone. She looked around, still feigning confusion. We had relations twice. I thought that was a dagger in the heart. I guess she found her man. I shook my head and walked away. She followed me and asked if something was wrong. I just said, no, I know where I stand. She said matter-of-factly, I'm sorry you are feeling this way. It wasn't the first time, and I assumed you knew that. Do you need anything? It is normal to feel the way you are. So if you want to talk, we can. Why would I want to talk about another guy sleeping with my wife? I just told her no and went about my day. This isn't the worst part, however. She just left on another date today. She was with a different guy, but she told me yesterday that she was going back out with John next Friday. I can't make sense of any of this. If she didn't think John was the guy, why sleep with him on Friday and plan another date? And I know this guy she went with today. It's Flipping Dan. I bought my last 2 vehicles from him. Those will be the last 2 I can tell you about. The most confusing thing is that she treats me like she wants me to be her husband. Better, I won't lie. Things may have been slightly stale. I never thought this would happen. We still loved each other. I thought we loved each other, but she probably still loves me, but isn't in love with me. It happens. I read about it all the time. Anyway, like I said, it had gotten a little stale. Yeah, we still had closeness some and spent time together, but it was routine. She has come to me around 4 or 5 times a week this past month. I know she is out looking for a new husband, and I should cut her off, but you know what? I don't care. The getting is good, and I'm going to get it. She also keeps asking me to do stuff with her. So we went to the theater together. She got tickets to a Bills game. I don't get it. She's acting like she was back when we were newlyweds. It's just odd behavior. If you don't love a guy anymore and want to be with other people, why put so much effort into the relationship? She has to have some ulterior motive here. I mean, I keep wondering why she won't just end our marriage. I guess she wants me to, so I look like the bad guy. Well, I'm not going to do that. Nor am I going to decline these invites and initiations she keeps making. 2 can play this game, and I have been playing it. I have been doing all the things I wanted to do. Not since that first date did she go on, but I stayed home and stewed in self-pity. I go out with friends. I've hit several bars in town and gone axe throwing. I'm not just sitting around waiting while she's out with these other guys. The only thing is, I'm getting a little lonely while she's out. I didn't think I would be, but knowing she's out there looking for my replacement hurts, because I'm not looking for her replacement. I don't even really want to replace her. I feel like I don't have a choice in this matter. She is dating. I should have done the same thing, but I had never been on a date. You know, it was 8th grade with my now wife. I passed her a note asking if she wanted to go out with me. She looked at me and nodded. We then exchanged phone numbers, which were home phone numbers. Sure, we went out together, but those weren't getting to know you dates. We already knew each other. I wouldn't know how to act on a date or the protocol. I've never used a condom before. Do I need one? Oh God, is she using condoms when she's out with John or Dan? Ugh, I can't think about that right now. I'm just not sure about any of this. But I know eventually she's going to drop me whenever she finds the right guy. So the clock is ticking here. I don't want to be left a bitter old man sitting around a one-bedroom apartment waiting to die alone. I guess at some point, I'm going to have to put myself out there and see what modern women are into. 6 months ago, my wife decided to start dating. It began on a blind date with a guy named John. It did not end there. It doesn't even seem half the time like she is trying to find a new husband. She barely spends any time with some of these guys she has been seeing. Dan is a good example. She was going on a date with him that Sunday, but returned to the house about an hour later. I figured it just didn't work out, but now, every few weeks on a Sunday, she will tell me she will see Dan and then return an hour later. How in the hell do you even build a rapport with someone in that short a time? It's not my concern. I find it curious. She still keeps up this happy wife charade. I can't tell you how many dates she and I have been on. I still accept almost every time unless it conflicts with my plans. I'm not giving up on this. She will break and leave before I do. However, it does get tough sometimes, especially when curiosity gets the best of me and I ask her about her plans or what she did while she was out. It's not even curiosity sometimes. It's just a habit. You ask a woman about herself every day for over 30 years. It just becomes second nature. She does not hold back. And believe me when I say ignorance is bliss. I will never get the mental image of what she's done out of my head. I do not even know the exact number of men she's been out with, but it has to be at least 10 men. Some of them are like 25 years old. How in the hell are you going to marry some guy who's only 3 years older than your daughter? Speaking of the kids, they're still totally in the dark about our impending divorce. I can't bring myself to say anything. When they visit or are home for breaks, my wife ceases all extramarital activity and spends time with the family. So, at least they aren't asking any questions or noticing anything out of the ordinary. I was going along well for the first 4 months after this all started. I had joined a bowling league. I started going out with 2 single guys from work. They have been a blast. Yet, I began to find myself feeling lonely. While putting in effort when she was home with me, my wife was still going out 1 to 2 nights per week. It started to show around this time because she recommended I go on a dating app and find someone else. That hurt because she blatantly said she didn't want me anymore. She wanted me to be with someone else. She then sent me a link to an app. Field is what it was called. I filled out all the information and got myself a profile. I didn't know what to put, so I kept it simple. This didn't get me anywhere, so my wife got on it and filled in more about me. That worked because I got matched with a local woman almost right away. Her name is Sarah, a 41-year-old female. We started just by talking. It was intoxicating getting to know this woman. I hadn't felt this way in a long time. We talked about everything. I told her about my job and my kids. We both love the Buffalo Bills. It was just easy. She has worked as an esthetician for 20 years and has a vast client base. She has one son who is 17 years old and a high school senior. The only thing we don't talk about is past or current relationships. She was clear early on that she was not interested in that if I was also dating other people. At the same time, she wouldn't be sharing anything with me about past relationships. I was completely fine with this. Why would I date more than one person at a time anyway? You can't determine if someone is the one if you constantly throw new people in the mix. That's something my wife could use a lesson in. Well, in the 6 weeks that Sarah and I have been together, we have done many great things. Our Friday night dates are always the highlight of my week. My wife also seems to be happy for me, which is weird, but it eases the guilt that I'm also finding my next spouse. Maybe she will even be inspired by Sarah and me to settle down and do this right. I am still going on dates and sleeping in the same bed with Angela, but that may change as Sarah and I progress our relationship in the next few weeks. All this isn't what I wanted or thought would happen. I thought my wife and I would be together forever. At least I know I can build a future with Sarah. I've never been more embarrassed in my entire life than I was last night. I'll start from the beginning. I have been dating this woman, Sarah, for about 9 months now. It has been going great. I spend at least one night a week with her. We also get to meet for lunches and stuff like that pretty often. She usually comes to my house as my wife typically goes out or stays somewhere else 1 or 2 nights a week, so I try to match that with Sarah. We spend tons of time each day messaging. It has been a breath of fresh air these months after my wife decided she was leaving me. She still has not done it and acts like we are a happy couple every day of the week. 3 weeks ago, I sat my wife down and told her I was no longer willing to be intimate with her. Sarah and I had begun saying, "I love you," at this point. I just felt like I was cheating on Sarah now that we were exclusive. My wife was hurt and told me so, even saying that could strain our marriage. That was the weirdest statement ever. What about our marriage? How is it not already strained by her auditioning a couple of dozen other guys to replace me? Anyway, I put that past me. We still go out to dinner and stuff, but I now sleep in the guest bedroom. I did not tell Sarah any of this because she has that strict rule about no past or current relationships being brought up, which seems overly specific to me, but I let it go. I mistakenly brought up my wife once, and she quickly corrected me. It was over, but she was very assertive then, and I dare not press that again. I asked Sarah this past week if she would go on a weekend trip with me. She said she had to check a few things. She replied a few hours later with a resounding yes. I was very excited. I had booked a bed and breakfast about 3 hours away. I got us a reservation at a very nice local restaurant. The town was full of little stores and antique shops, which interested us both. We arrived Friday night and had a wonderful evening. Ate dinner at a nice bar and grill, then back to the room for a very intimate night. The next day, we enjoyed our alone time until about midday. We shopped for a few hours before returning to the room to get cleaned up. I didn't tell her I had a carriage ride booked to take us to the restaurant. Before this evening, I had visited a lawyer and had divorce papers drawn up to serve to my wife. She will be served on Monday. After the carriage ride picked us up, which it appeared Sarah enjoyed, I made my true intentions known. I am a 47-year-old man who wants to share his life with someone. I share my thoughts and feelings about her with Sarah, how much I love her, and how she makes me feel as a man. Then I told her I wanted to spend my life with her and pulled a beautiful diamond ring. I knelt in the carriage and asked her to marry me. I did not get the reaction I expected. She began tearing up and asked, "Why are you doing this?" I was as dumbfounded as I was that day my wife told me she was going on a blind date. She looked at me and said, "I have no desire to leave my marriage. I care about and love you, but this would never be the outcome." I couldn't believe my ears. She was married. Why is she out here on a date with me if she's already married? I looked at her, hurt in my eyes. "You're married?" She was noticeably alarmed by my question. "Yes. How did you not know that?" "I mean, you're married too, right?" I didn't answer. I was too upset. I jumped down from the carriage ride and honestly felt lucky I didn't hurt myself. I began walking back towards our room. The driver noticed and stopped. I picked up my pace when I saw Sarah start to get out. I had no desire to hear her out at this time. I noticed she got back in the carriage and was taken back to the room ahead of me. That was fine, whatever. When I returned, she tried to talk to me, but I ignored her. We had ridden together, so I knew I couldn't leave her here 3 hours from home. I told her to pack her things and not speak to me. I needed to come down from this. She seemed very annoyed and confused, which I also found infuriating. This woman has been cheating on her husband with me for the past 9 months. That is just irreconcilable. I put the ear pods my kids got me for Christmas in and refused to talk back the entire drive. When we arrived, she said, "I'm in an open marriage. It was on my bio when you first messaged me." "So are you. Why are you acting like this?" I just said, communication styles aside, I haven't felt married to my spouse since she started looking for my replacement. I even have her being served divorce papers on Monday. "I thought you were the one. I guess the joke's on me." At that point, I drove off and headed back home. Sarah has not messaged me since. When I arrived at my house, an unusual car was in my driveway. I thought to myself that I could not deal with this right now. I'm just going to go in and go to the spare bedroom. When I entered, I had hoped they were somewhere else, but no, Angela and this other couple were drinking some wine in the living room. As I tried to walk by, Angela called me. "Hi, honey. What are you doing here? Where's Sarah? I thought you had the big weekend planned." I looked over at her and her 2 guests. Thankfully, the guy was usually dressed, but Angela and this other woman were both in lingerie. I just shook my head. Unfortunately, I had a tear in my eye, and when she looked at me with such concern, I broke down a little. There was an audible gasp as for the first time I let the pain in. She hugged me. The guests got up to leave, but before they could, it just came out. She was cheating on her husband. My wife stepped back, and unfortunately, we were blocking her two guests' escape route. My wife, perplexed, said, "What do you mean cheating? I thought she was in an open marriage just like us. You two met on field." I pulled back and looked at her. She said the same thing. What does our communication style matter? It doesn't matter how well you communicate if you will do whatever you want. Just like you asked me to be open, and then a month later, you started dating that John guy, and it only got worse. So yeah, I agreed, but I haven't been telling you much since you decided you needed a new husband. My wife looked at me very concernedly and said slowly, "Honey, what do you think an open marriage is?" I looked at my wife's guests with shocked faces, then down at her, as she had the most concern I had ever seen in her eyes. It's just being open about your feelings and communicating. My wife stumbled back. "Honey, an open marriage is when a couple agrees that dating other people and having sexual relationships with others is allowed, yet they still intend to stay married and be a committed couple." I looked at her blankly. Yet my mind exploded. What? Why would anyone agree to that? I was in a trance. Is that what she has been doing this whole time? Finally, I responded, "So, you haven't been looking for a new husband?" Angela, "Oh my God, honey, I love you. I don't want another husband. We had only ever known each other to any degree. We've been together since the 8th grade. I just thought we could both have some new experiences. I thought things were going great until you moved into the spare bedroom a few weeks ago." I cannot believe what I was hearing. This whole time, all the men, and I guess women, that she has slept with were all just for fun? There was this insane awkwardness in the room, and we were still blocking the door so the other couple could leave. The male half finally made a throat-clearing noise, and we moved out. The woman put on a coat, and they both left. Then, much to my dismay, I could hear both of them loudly say in unison, "Oh, my God." My wife and I spent the night talking. I remember when she asked for the open marriage. It just meant being honest. Thinking back now, it made more sense when she brought it up, and when I agreed, she asked me about limitations, boundaries, and rules. I stupidly said, why would anyone need any of those things in an open marriage? All confident and sarcastic. I agreed to an open marriage for the last 13 months and didn't even know what I had decided to do. I am a moron. I told my wife about the divorce papers and the proposal. That pretty much hurts her, and we have both agreed to start couples counseling. My wife asked me to move back into our bedroom, and I did so last night, which I am taking as a good sign that she wants to save our marriage and work past this. I also could use the therapy, as finding out that not only did your wife have closeness with 19 other men, she also outdid you on sleeping with other women 2-1. It would have been 3-1, but I interrupted the party. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Did the real world pass me by? I'm sitting here thinking, how could I not figure this out in 13 months? Why didn't I end things with my wife or speak up immediately? I'm so conflicted. On one side, I feel betrayed by her and am angry about all that she did. At the same time, though, I told her to go out and have fun. I agreed to all of this, and when it bothered me, I kept it to myself. It did lead to some positives. We dated and had relations way more often. I also got to be with someone else, which I had always wondered about. I made new friends and did things I probably wouldn't have otherwise. At the same time, my wife went off the deep end, and she never noticed or checked in with me. I made a fool of myself in front of Sarah and that couple, whom I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the tale of the oblivious husband is all over the internet by now. I hope my real name doesn't end up in there. I'll call tomorrow and stop serving the divorce papers. I'll also send Sarah an apology and explanation. She deserves that much. I don't think I will try to rekindle things. My wife and I agreed to stop the open marriage. We want to see how much repair we can do before making any decisions. 6 months into us trying to repair our broken marriage. Part because I was not aware of what my wife was asking for, in part because I did not put a stop to my wife's actions when they started. I noticed my wife's location at a house I was unfamiliar with and drove there. I sat outside for about 2 hours and witnessed my wife leaving the house and heading home. I arrived home 30 minutes after my wife and asked her where she had been. My wife told me she was out shopping. I asked my wife what she bought, and my wife had a puzzled look on her face. She said she was just window shopping for a new dress and had not decided which dress she wanted. The next day, I went back to my lawyer's office and asked him to serve my wife divorce papers. My wife was served 2 weeks later, and she angrily asked me why I was divorcing her. I calmly looked at her and said we still have location sharing. I know what you've been up to. My wife started crying and said she loved me and wanted to stay married. Then I looked at her and said, plus, continue to see other guys. I then told my wife that I told the kids everything, and now they can live the life they want to live. My wife yelled, "Why did you tell the kids so I could be the bad guy?" I said yes and left the house. We divorced 6 months later, and the kids took a little time to come around before they started talking to their mom again, with some significant encouragement for me. I didn't want college graduation or grandkids' birthday parties to be me versus my future ex-wife. It took some time, but I got used to a single life. 32 years of having a warm body next to you is hard to overcome. After 2 years of being single, I started dating a widower, and 3 years later, we got married. My ex-wife did the swingers thing for about a year before she tried to get back together with me. We ran into each other at a coffee shop, and she asked to talk. I agreed, and we got caught up in our lives. She told me life was not the same without me, and she made a big mistake looking for cheap thrills when she had a perfect life with me. I told my ex that I should have shut down her dating early, but was so caught off guard, and I was afraid of losing her. My ex asked if we could try again, and I told her no, I wanted to move on. My ex went over our shared history and the time we've been together. I should be open to giving her another chance. I told her I did, and she went behind my back and said she would do it again. She said she would never cheat again, and cheating was a small moment of weakness. Then I asked her if the guy I caught over the house was the only one, and she looked away and said no. Today, I'm happy again, and my ex is dating. We last saw each other at my daughter's wedding, and we gave her away. I met my ex's date, and she met my wife for the first time. I introduced my wife to my ex-wife, and my ex-wife shook my wife's head hard, as if to say you are in my spot. My wife returned the favor and shook my ex-wife's hand just as hard, and my ex-wife let go of my wife's hand. As we were leaving, I looked back at my ex-wife, who was watching us leave. Then my wife kissed me and said, "Your ex-wife shakes hands like a little girl." We both laughed and headed home.